What's up, what's up, what's up? Peace, peace, peace. So here we are. Okay, here it is, here it is. Of course I was gonna make a video about the great Nipsey Hussle, but I wanted to give him respects, for one, right? I wanted to wait till he was actually in the ground, buried, proper, you know, get all that out the way. You know, I didn't want to make no name, no money. I didn't want to make no fame, no views. You know, I didn't want to do any of that. I just had a little bit more respect. So now that he's properly buried, we can speak. You know, because a lot of people have made theories and all this thing. You know, we're not even going to get into all that, right? People speak. But unless you have communicated with him personally, necromancy, unless you have communicated with him, which until a person is in the ground, it's very hard to do for those who may not understand. So if he's only been in the ground recently, and again, no disrespect whatsoever, ain't nobody really been communicating with the spirit like that. People have just been speculating and making theories and conspiracies. No one's actually, it's not too many people, if anybody, that says, yeah, I've actually spoken to the spirit or had some type of interaction, connection, right? So now that he's buried, everything is respectful. That's why I'm not even, I'm not even going to put the name in the title, because it's not about even getting it out here. It's just for those who are already here, those who are already in the inner circle. It's just for you. For anybody who, if you're not even in tune with it, it's not going to make sense anyway. Because it's just out of respect. It's more of a secret society. Like, this isn't really for the public. So now that we got that out the way, public service announcement, all that, let's get into it. The reason why when Nipsey Hussle passed, why it was such a different vibe, or such a different feeling, why it wasn't just another rapper dying to gang violence, why they have went to such extremes to make it not that, because it wasn't that. Like, yo, it definitely wasn't just a normal exchange and things got out of hand. This was personally motivated, so on and so forth. We've seen everything that's been going on. Well, if you've been in tune, you've seen everything that's been going on. And of course, for those who understand, you know, I've done plenty, hundreds of videos in California, so I'm very connected to this whole, I'm not gonna say I have any connections to the personal area, even though I've been in the area many times. So again, I want to be as respectful as possible. I don't want to say anything disrespectful to anything that's going on over there. Again, I'm in Vegas now. Haven't been in California. I don't know. It's been a couple months now. So I haven't been there recently, because every time I think about going, you know, things get kind of tense. So I kind of back off a little bit, kind of fill out the atmosphere. But let's get into it. This is what's the energy in LA is intense. If people ask me, have I made the video? I'm making a video now. I'm not going to put his name in the title, just out of respect for him. Because I'm not doing this video trying to get views and clout. So again, if you're not already in the inner mix, it's not going to make any sense to you. Because this is a personal thing for those who are within, who already speak the lingo. Again, this is not really for the outer public. The reason why he has been elevated to the status he was on a personal level. Personally, he had transcended. Like, he could have did what he was doing anywhere else, but he chose to maintain that connection with, the essence that fed him, the essence that nurtured him, the essence that made him who and what he was. So instead of, him getting the money and leaving, he wanted to reinvest back into his own community, which he was doing successfully. So the reason why his passing was different is because he was actually putting the work in, of course. Then, of course, we know the manner in which he passed, was very hate motivated, so on and so forth. Again, we don't have to go into any details. We don't have to go into any conspiracies. It's enough people making those type of videos. But just as someone who has walked those grounds, someone who has walked that land, someone who has spent years in California, years studying and observing the culture, you're not going to really understand being out. See, most people don't understand being outside of the culture, never walking the lands themselves. So it's a different thing. So people outside of it wouldn't really give you the inner perspective. And I'm not necessarily talking about what actually happened, what transpired. What I mean by the inner perspective is just the essence and the culture of California as a whole, especially Southern California. So if you're not aware, let me bring you up to speed, at least as much as I can. Of course, we know it's California, so we know it's highly motivated by the energy of Kali, which is a Vedic goddess. The Western version of that would be Lilith, right? Which is the she-devil, the liberated woman, right? The scarlet woman, many different names for this woman, right? Then the masculine version of that would be Belial. So you have Lilith, you have Belial, if we want to take it to mythology, right? You have the Ishtar's Gate in Hollywood and Highland, so on and so forth. This is what I mean by the history. Once we start actually doing the history of what actually has transpired in the city as a whole, what he did makes more sense when you study what has transpired beforehand. Once you study what has transpired beforehand, then what he does makes a lot more sense. Meaning California has always been progressive, has always been progressively minded. Again, California is one of the few states that has legalized marijuana, so on and so forth, California, essentially started the 420 culture, for those who may not know. 420 is that's California culture. All that comes from California. So anything associated with the stoner life, so on and so forth, that originates in California. So California always has a connection to the psychedelics. If you have ever been in California, this is a very beautiful place. Palm trees is very beautiful outwardly. Versus if you go to a place like New York, you pretty much only have like Central Park. It's not really that much nature. In California, there's an abundance of nature. There's places you can go in. You essentially you can be out in the wild, just hiking somewhere, just going up mountains. You literally are one step away from nature. You go to a place like New York, you kind of have to find and navigate your way around, right? So California has always been more traditional in that sense. Obviously, it's a time difference, so there's a difference in consciousness. That's why California is more traditional. Like for example, you will go to California and you will see people posted up, selling things. People posted up on the blocks selling fruits, selling all types of goods. You literally have a street economics. You have a street market, right? People support themselves in the street. So you can go to certain. I don't want to name any streets. You can go to certain streets and they have literally like merchants. They got their whole supply. They just lay it out on the street, and as people are walking past, you're just able to literally buy anything you need, from household products to jewelry. You literally is all on the street. So it's like a whole street economic base in California. Versus if you come to places like Las Vegas, and then you go to places like New York, it's not really as tolerated, right? They don't tolerate the hustle like they tolerate it in California. California has always been known as an outlaw city. Not, of course, we're California's a state, but we're specifically focusing on the southern aspects. So you got the northern and you got the southern. The southern, especially, has been more of an outlaw county, state. Just the whole Southern California. California has always been motivated by the bass. If we speak in musical terms, especially if you go back to Too Short music, it's heavily bass motivated. We understand that California has the base chakra. If the planet was divided into chakras, the base chakra would be at Mount Shasta, right? Mount Shasta, which is in California, Northern California. So the base chakra of the planet is in California. Of course, we know Cali is Lilith, right? We know the Kali Yuga, if we want to break it down to cycles. So Kali Yuga is the deadest spiritual time, like when spirituality is completely dead. That's the phase of Kali Yuga, because Kali, if we are speaking about the deity, she represents ignorance, but she also represents liberation. And that's what California is. Like, you look at the culture of California, a lot of people say it's a deaf culture, right? Gang banging is a deaf culture. But at the same time, on the flip side of it, you also have liberation. So Cali is about the deaf, but she's also about liberation, which is why the drugs and the psychedelics is heavy there as well, where people are liberating their minds. So when you put it together, it's not what it seems outside of what other people may view it as. Other people may view it as a certain thing, but if you are in the inside of it, it's an entire culture, it's an entire way of life. So when things happen, when people go through trials and tribulations, part of the code. The same thing will happen if you were to join the army. And especially in times of war, people may be dying every single day, right? In times of war, if you were in the army, you will see death every day. You will be carrying bodies every day. Like, your connection with death will be completely different. So put this in mind. Like, if you were in the army and in times of war, your own homies are dying all the time around you. You carrying bodies, you're seeing gruesome shots, you're seeing brains blew out. You're exposed to all the stuff we're not exposed to, right? So this shapes and develops how, because you are exposed to so much death. When you are exposed to a lot of death, it starts to shape and mold you in a certain way. So when we think about California culture being so much death, surrounded by so much, it puts a special type of energy in the air. It puts a specialness in that territory. So when we speak about the deaf culture, when we speak about California culture, the psychedelic culture, when you apply all of the dynamics together and you look at it as one whole culture, right? Because again, you can say gang banging is a separate culture, the psychedelics is a separate culture, the progressive mentality is a separate culture, right? So you have these various cultures happening in California. Of course, California's contribution to with the pop and the lock and so on and so forth. So California has always been contributing various things to, especially the hip hop. culture. So when it comes to Nipsey Hussle, what he contributed was not just great music, you know, a Grammy nominated album, but he also contributed progressive, not just a progressive mentality, but then he solidified it and actually investing in real estate and showing that it could be done right from the area he was essentially where he'd been his whole life. So he was one of the first, if not the first, to accomplish this feat in terms of to do what he did right in his own hood. Right? There's a lot of people in the music industry make records and money and do side of their communities, but he's doing business right inside of his community. Providing jobs, so on and so forth. So his economic game was on point. His father is from Africa, right? Again, we don't have to go into the family dynamics and pedigree. We don't have to make it personal. Just giving you an overall view of the dynamics of why this was so significant, right? So when he passed, that's why we was hearing a whole lot of associations with him being associated with Jesus, 33, even though he looked like a Muslim, with the beard, but they was associating him with Jesus. See, it's a lot of dynamics. When we look at the entire situation, there's a lot of dynamics going on. But as I said, when you understand the overall culture, the California with Cali, again, this is the thing. California was also the first state where the Eastern knowledge landed in the West. Like for those who know that history, like the Eastern knowledge, yoga, all various forms of yoga first came to Western society in California. Read the autobiography of the yogi for that history, for those who want to reference, right? California. So California has maybe 200 to 300 years of Eastern, which is why when you go to California, all that 2012 consciousness that everyone was on, that's like the normal in California. Like I moved to California in 2009. So I came to California before the whole awakening. I observed everything the whole 2012 phenomenon was about. I was already observing that in the everyday culture of California. So when that whole thing happened, people just became more aware of the Eastern philosophy. But that California they already got centuries invested in that knowledge. You got people who have created businesses for themselves because they have already been grounded in that it's nothing new to them, right? So because they're already rooted in that knowledge, when it became a greater thing in the 21st century, with the law of attraction, so on and so forth, it was just an emphasis on California culture. Again, I was able, so when the whole 2012 happened, I was in California at the time, so I was actually in the culture again from like 2009, 2013. And of course, y'all see me in California infinite amount of times, right? So by me being so intricate and involved with just how the dynamics are, like whenever I go to California, it puts you in a militant mentality. Just to get a comparison, like if you was to compare Los Angeles to Las Vegas, you feel free. You don't feel like you had to look over your shoulder. You know what I mean? You feel like just be yourself and be open. You go to Southern California now, it's a little, the dynamics are different. It's not even you having to be involved in anything crazy. You don't have to be involved. The codes are active. So let me speak about this aspect because, a lot of people were speaking about, the shooter was all the snitch and street codes and, right? A lot of people speak about this, but they don't. Let me tell you what all this means. Street codes and not necessarily, I don't want to, I've spoken about so many dynamics. So let's just keep it clean, right? When it comes to the code, even if you are not involved in any type of illegal activity, you still are not allowed to cooperate or interact with law enforcement because you still have to live there. What do I mean is this? Let's just say you have no involvement in anything illegal, but you witness something. The police come to the block, question you, you tell the truth, and let's just say people go to jail over that. You still have to live there. Those people know what you did. Now it becomes a problem. You get what I'm so even though you have involvement in anything, you still have to abide by the code if you wish to have a comfortable existence there. Because it's an outlaw city, you have a lot of going on. So even if you have no involvement, you still have to abide by the rules and regulations, even if you have nothing to do with it. Because if you get caught saying something you're not supposed to say, you have to deal with the consequences. Now, if people look at you a certain type of way, or your face is no longer good in certain locations, it becomes a problem, especially if you have to live there. So you have a lot of military tactics going on again because of the gang. You said the gang culture has been in California maybe since the 1800s, maybe late 1800s. So it's a century deep. So that culture is super deep. You have these older cultures that we are observing in moderate times trying to apply some type of understanding to it. So we're trying to apply understanding to a culture that is a century old, or 2 centuries, 3 centuries old. We can't really view it from the modern lens because it's not going to make sense. Of course, if you look at, let's just, any California culture, it doesn't make any sense from a modern perspective. It makes no sense. Like, okay, why does a gang culture even exist? It doesn't really make sense in these 21st century terms. But if you take it back to, like, no, you had to fight for the streets. Like, if you had to fight for your territory, like, just look at it as new territory. You have all these people coming into this new territory. They have to divide. Every gang is connected to a piece of land, some type of geographic location, right? Meaning this is where we posted our flag, wherever that location may be. Every gang is connected to a piece of land, some type of turf, some type of earth. This is, as they call it, set. There's some type of earth connected to every extension. So every from some type of earth, or it should be that way. So because if we take it back 100 years, it gives it a lot more relevance when we understand. Okay, if you take it to the 1800s, in terms of how they were thinking, the 1800s, the 19th century, we know that the 19th century was super big. So the 19th century was a century of alchemists. So gang banking came in this time. So when we study history, we can apply the mentality that was had at the times of the development of these types of cultures. 19th century was a century of the alchemists. So you had advanced information being revealed, especially if you the West Coast, Aleister Crowley with Thelema. You talk about the East Coast with Helena Blavatsky. All this is happening in the 19th century. Again, you got Elijah Muhammad being. All this metaphysical knowledge is viewing everywhere in the 19th century. Again, that's why I speak about it so much. So if gang culture came around in the 19th century and you apply okay, this is when everything was alchemy, advanced hermeticism, so on and so forth. It was heavy with that type of just Western occultism as a whole. You know what I mean? Even the gangs, so the gangs with the sign and all that, like, oh, that's masonry. I'm like, okay, this is what it appears to the surface. And again, we don't have to get into every single dynamic, just to apply the mentality of the time. And you can, like, okay, this is a lot more intricate than it seems on the surface. There's a lot of literature behind these dynamics, a lot of politics. It's a lot that is not seen and observed from the outside. So when you look at it from the outside, the inside makes no sense. It's like quantum physics. If you try to observe quantum physics, the nature changes. Like when you are viewing something, it solidifies itself. When you take your awareness off of it, it becomes wavy. We understand quantum physics. It's the same thing. If you are trying to observe something with a laser vision, it's going to have a solidified view. But once you take your eyes off of it, it becomes, you know. So, because we understand that, going back to modern times, so we are seeing a ancient culture in moderate times. Just we're talking about just the culture of Southern California, but it can be applied to any culture anywhere on the planet. Once we understand the time and the mentality, okay, well, what was the current thought of the time? Like, how was the overall thesis? What were people studying? When we understand the information that was available to the people, what were the best books coming out at the time? So what was being studied? So when we understand what people were studying, what was on people's tongue, you can kind of identify where the people were, because what moves the culture is not only the music, but the literature, all forms of poetry. The literature moves the culture. Again, all forms of creative expression, the poet, the prophet, so on and so forth, the politician. These are the forces that move the culture forward. So, because they are said to be in tune with an alternative reality. That's why artists are connected to, psychedelic herbs, which places them in an alternative reality or make them more aware of the quantum reality, and they're able to pull that creative force and manipulate that creative force into words and however they express themselves, dance moves, so on and so forth. So Southern California culture is an ancient culture. So if we try to apply the modern day lens to it, it doesn't make any sense, which is why, again, it's hard to understand it. But when we observe it from the creation and the mentality from the inception of it, it makes a lot more sense. Even if it doesn't necessarily fit into the dynamics of this culture or the modern culture, it fits into the dynamics of the culture it originated from. So this is just like religion killed off anybody who was not with Christianity. Anyone who was not with Christianity, it wasn't like it was now. As they say, everyone is allowed to practice their religion. Whatever your religion is, you have the freedom to do it. Before that was enforced, if you wasn't with it, ordered. So a lot of the history and a lot of the culture was not preserved because people were just killed off. A lot of, again, we got back to history. We know that the Moors ruled in Spain from 700 AD to 1400 AD. When we saw from 1400 AD to 1700 AD were the witch hunts. We know the famous witch hunts. So once the Moors were pushed out of Spain, then the people that were in power, now they started passing laws to legally execute witches. So once they, you can say, exiled the men, who later became the pirates, because now you had to live on the sea. Imagine having to live on sea. Completely changes your mentality. Anyway, so the powers that be passed laws that allowed them to legally execute witches, or the women who, or they then, some of the women went, some didn't, so on and so forth. Some of them went to live in the wilderness in the wild to escape. Again, some people escaped to seas, some escaped to land. Is exactly the Inquisition, right? When we understand history and we apply our mind, we can put the pieces together, right? So a lot of witches were legally killed. So they were completely purging the territory of anything relating to sorcery, witchcraft, all the so-called dark magic, black magic. They were completely cleansing themselves of what they thought was cleansing themselves. All right, they didn't want nothing to do with it. So they passed laws to legally execute people in public. That it was they was with all that. Again, if we look at all this in modern times with the modern lens, we like, yo, just imagine seeing you can like literally go observe people being killed all day. You can like it's criminals all the time. And like you can literally go sit in attendance and watch a person get devoured by a lion or get their head cut off by an executor. Yeah, I think you just paid. I believe in ancient times you just paid a fee and you can observe murder and death. You know, that's what we come from though. Like you can like as crazy as that may seem in modern times, like yo, you just pay a fee. You're like, that would be kind of interesting. Just imagine it would be taboo, but people would I would do it. Like, oh, you can $5, you can witness death. Because it changes you when you witness enough death, it changes you in ways you will not change. Otherwise, death quickens your soul. Okay, let's get back to it. Ancient cultures viewed with modern lens. So with the Nipsey Hussle, this is why his was so prominent because again, if you apply the whole Californian history, then you see what he did. He was an extension of the Californian mindset. You know, Silicon Valley, so on and so forth. The golden frequency, you know, California, the golden state. He represented that golden frequency. So that's why they associated him with the Christ consciousness because he represented that golden frequency being from the land. Who started to transcend because obviously at the time of his passing, you know, he wasn't obviously, you know, he wasn't pulling the trigger, even though he referred to himself as a shooter. He transcended, and he was putting it into his music. His progression is in his music, which makes it it's very interesting to listen to his life story now that he passed, and when people are you're like, yo, he was very progressive, but it's all throughout music. You know, he has interviews when he was 19, 20 years old speaking about the things that he actually did. You know, he already had the plan intact. He already had the plan before anything was executed. So when we go back and we study, like, yo, he already had the format. It's not something that he necessarily learned over time. You know, he had to suffer a lot, and of course he was independent for majority of. He only had one major album, so he released mostly independent underground projects, supporting himself. You know, him along with his support, and he did what he did, essentially with his own power. He showed forth his own power. So that progressive mentality and show forth in your own power. That's the true Californian mentality. Just when you observe the culture with your own eyes, you know, which is why we all have to travel to observe the differences in the culture, because you're like, oh, if we really want to understand consciousness, you have to travel between the time zones. As you travel between the time zones, you see how that influences how people go about their lifestyle and how they choose to accomplish certain goals. How you would accomplish a certain goal in California is going to be completely different if you was in New York. It's going to be completely different if you was in Atlanta, which is going to be completely different if you was in Chicago, so on and so forth. Depending on where you are in consciousness will determine how you go about your lifestyle. So because you can say California or just the whole, the, what is it called, the Pacific Coast time, that whole time zone has a certain consciousness. And because the time zone has a certain type of consciousness, when we observe the people who reflect this consciousness, we are observing something greater than what we are perceiving with our eyes. Right? We are witnessing something greater than what can be perceived because we can't perceive everything with our eyes. We can't hear everything with the ears. Our physical senses are limited until I'll say it this way. The physical senses are limited until you develop them. And this is what we speak about in the other videos, developing and extending your psychic centers. You have to extend them. When you extend them, you can observe more of reality. This is why I speak about numerology, astrology, so on and so forth. You know, numerology taps into a whole different reality when you understand the numericals behind everything. Everything has numbers. Every address, you know, every license plate, everything is ruled by mathematics. So when you start to develop a relationship and you give these mathematics meaning, you can start to see like, oh, this is what this means, and you can start to see that reality reflected. Oh, that isn't just a barcode, that isn't just a number, that's a consciousness, that's a reality and reflected. So when you have that number on your ID, you're not, you know, you everything, we're assigned so many numbers that represents a consciousness that means something. Every person lives in a household with numericals, numerology. Numerology is in every dimension of the matrix. So the more you understand the symbols, the more you understand what cannot be perceived by the eyes. Now you have to perceive with the mind. You have to use your mind to decipher the numerology. Your physical eye ain't going to be able to do it. Now you got to start to work different chambers of the mind. Like, okay, I see what that means. Oh, like, okay, this is, let me give you an example. If a person lives in a one vibration home, this is what I mean by we are not stagnant beings. I'll give you an example. When I go to California, like I was speaking about earlier, I get into this militant mentality. Not because I'm that way or I'm not that way. You can observe my videos when I'm there. I'm more militant. It's just the atmosphere it brings that out of you. It's going to bring that solar power out of you. It's coming out. You know what I mean? Because that's how they survive there. They feed on that solar force. So it's coming out. You come to Las Vegas, that lunar energy is going to come out of you because now we're dealing with the silver state. So now that lunar energy is coming out. And again, depending on where you are, it's going to promote a certain thing that's going to be arisen from within. So it's not that you are this way or not this way. It's not that you're just, you know, you're progressive or you're not. It all depends on where you are. That influences what type of thoughts are in that consciousness. So California has certain thoughts. Then the East Coast has certain thoughts. They are depending on the time zone, which influences the consciousness. The consciousness influences which thoughts are magnetized to the frequency. East Coast, the East is more connected to numerology. When I was in New York, it was an emphasis on numerology. You know, people were speaking to me, speaking about numericals. You know, they were speaking about the odd numbers, like odd numbers are lucky numbers, so on and so forth. Like people were speaking to me, and I was just hearing the conversation. Everybody's talking about their mathematics, you know, finance and so on. It's like, oh, everybody's thinking on a heightened mathematical level there. All you hear is mathematical talk, mathematics. If you ain't hearing mathematics, it's just a bunch of, you know, regular talk. But if it, depending on where your consciousness is, you know, because I went there with the intention of I just want to observe the consciousness. That's why I went to the East. I wanted to observe the consciousness. I want to see how it's different than the West. You know, I wanted to observe the differences. So when I observed the differences, it made me a more vast person because I saw how they. Because again, I wasn't just there for a weekend. Again, I got the videos. Y'all can just go back. I observed the videos. I was there for an entire month. So I was there an entire, you know, it takes you 21 days to develop a new habit. So I'm like, I was there, give me about 21 days. So by the time I leave, I have developed myself enough to where I could live here day to day if I needed to. If I needed to stay longer, I could, because it's not like I'm just in and out real quick. Like, either I liked it or I didn't like it. If I liked it or didn't like it, I have to adapt. So I allowed myself to adapt, to really adapt to the consciousness and the frequency, and just what is the mentality here? How are people able to do what they do? The same thing with California. How are people able to do what they do? When you observe these various lifestyles, it starts to make sense when you tap into that consciousness, when you really are passionate about how things work. When you're really passionate about how things work, the life starts to reveal things to you. This is why they say, like, when you have an ignorant mentality, when you're not focused on how things work, then there's all types of distractions all the time. You have infinite distractions. But when you have focused your mind, and like, how does this work? How does this work? How are people able to do this? Then the information is revealed to you randomly. You know what I mean? It's like this is how you pray. This is my definition of praying. It's like you're pondering. How does this work? You know, you just have a desire to know the intricacies of the infrastructure. You're not satisfied with the surface. You want to know the inner workings. You want to know the inner mechanisms of things. Because once you understand the inner mechanisms, it's like understanding the individual gears. Just imagine there's 100 different gears, little gears, and you have the mind to align all of these gears together to the point where you can spin it, and all 100 gears spin, and then you have to align them in a certain grid. You have to create a grid for that to even happen. You have to have a intricate mind. That's more of the Saturn frequency, the vibration of the number 8, to understand the intricacies, so on and so forth. I want to give as much as possible in this video, because when we understand America as a whole, I know most of my viewers are in America. So I speak about America just to speak about where we are. I don't really want to focus too much on the Eastern philosophy. That's, again, if you've been watching my videos, you see I've been speaking more about the darkness. Like, why darkness? Because this is the American culture. I need to speak about the American culture for us. If we want to manipulate the land here, if we want to dominate and have power, we have to work with American spirits. And I'm not just talking about North, Central, or South. I'm talking about the entire Americas, the North, Central, and South. All American spirits. If you are in America, you can have an Eastern philosophy. But if you are trying to obtain power here, you have to fuse with the American spirits. That's what voodoo is. So you have voodoo, which is in Haiti, but voodoo is from New Orleans, because it's a variation of them, because of voodoo, those spirits fused with Native American spirits, because the natives that were already here in the Americas, because, you know, for those who understand history, free Haitians that were not slaves, they came, you know, many of them came to New Orleans, and they were freely practicing, you know, their culture, their voodoo, you know, because they had no reason to think different. Like, why can't I practice my culture? I bought my freedom, or I was born a free man, free woman. I do what I want. Land of the free. So the Catholic Church at the time would just let them know that you ain't doing this, right? For those who understand the voodoo history, you know what I'm speaking about. So they were pushed out. Voodoo ain't from New Orleans, from Africa. I'm about voodoo. I'm not speaking about where it's from. I spoke about you have variations of voodoo. You have voodoo, you have voodoo. So yes, variations, but I'm speaking about the American version, the New Orleans version. So when we say voodoo, we're speaking about the New Orleans version. If you know the New Orleans history, I'm not saying that that's the origin of black magic. I never said that. I'm just speaking about the specific New Orleans history of voodoo and how that developed on American soil, because voodoo was fused with Native American spirits. That's what made it voodoo, as opposed to voodoo type of black magic. Voodoo specifically is fused with American spirits. That's what voodoo is. Again, central, even if it's Haiti, is still Central America. So these are American spirits, that the voodoo which we know about. Not to say that there are not different types of voodoo elsewhere. Again, this is just to even have that conversation keeps people divided, which is I don't have those conversations, because just that creates a division for no reason. Because regardless of where it comes from, we are the same people. Well, that's what people say, right? But we see that that's not what they mean. If we're all the same people, we're talking about the same thing. We just got different. You can say the original man's science is black magic. So we see it. That's just the history, all right? Hoodoo is voodoo out all the ritual. Okay. So we know what we're speaking about. It's no need to create the separation or the division. We all know what we're speaking about here. We can find the black magic all over the planet. You can find it in the air all the way to America. We know this. But because we are in America, we have to focus on American spirits. If you try to work with Eastern spirits, it's not that they don't work. They're just too distant. Understand what I'm saying? Let's just say you want to work with Lakshmi, Ganesha, so on and so. The Eastern philosophy is very deep on the Western Hemisphere. No problem. But understand, you are working with distant spirits. You're not working with spirits that are right next to you. You're working with spirits that, again, you have to establish a connection, versus if you work with some American spirits, like you can summon him right up out of the ground, because this is the soil that he comes from, or she comes from. This is what the difference, to summon right out of the soil versus air. Or you get, this is what I mean. If we're talking about manipulating the land, if we're talking about power, if we're talking about law, you're talking about ownership. We're talking about dynamics. We're talking about economics. Right. The Aztecs, the Olmecs, exactly. The natives of the Americas. Those were the natives of Americas, which we don't really hear too much mention of those, right? We hear all about Indians. You don't hear too much talk about Olmec, Aztec, Inca, so on and so forth, because that's the real deal. That's where all these designs and all that. That's what this come from. You look at Aztecs design. This is where all this come from. You know, it's a lot more heavier in Arizona. Arizona is more open to that type of culture. You know, because they understand. Nonetheless, this is why we travel. We have to get information from different places that are more open and receptive. You can say the West Coast is more receptive to the Eastern philosophy. The Eastern, or like New York, is more receptive to, you can say, Buddhism, right? The West Coast has a certain thing, the East Coast has another thing, right? It's more Buddhism, more Taoism on the East. It's more liberalism or liberalism on the West. When we do the history, we know it's the Aleister Crowley, the Helena Blavatsky. When we study those, we understand the West, we understand the East, right? Especially in the 19th century. We get stuck on Egypt. It's not that people are stuck on Egypt. It's the same thing with Pan-African. Pan-African is an ideology. Like Egyptology is an ideology. We don't really know the real culture of Egypt because you have to channel that. A book is not going to tell you. Even if you are observing, you can be there on the land observing. Until you conduct rituals that wake the dead up, you ain't getting no real information. You got to wake the dead up. You don't see people going to Egypt waking shit up. They're looking at dead corpses. They ain't waking nothing up. They ain't over there seeing the inner dimensions. You got to have a certain mentality to do things of that nature. It's a whole different thing. Ain't no, but this is why I said in the beginning of the video, Nipsey Hussle just recently was buried, but you had so many people speaking on his name, happened, this, that, trying to make money off of his death, all that, you know what I mean? People putting advertisements on their videos. I found it highly disrespectful. That's why I didn't do it. Again, that's why I'm not even putting his name in this video. Just a whole lot of respect. Now that he's in the ground, now somebody, okay, wake him up. Not that you would want to, because again, you were supposed to rest in peace. Not even that you would want to do that. But if you was a real about, like, okay, let me actually see what, if he had a message to convey to the people, let's see what he to say, versus we speculating and we assuming things which we have no knowledge of, versus someone like, all right, I had to, this is what he actually said to me. Not that it makes it law, but you don't hear people doing that. Like, this is the conversation that I had. You know, like, let's just say you lit up, you know, do what you do. But you know, it's a mentality. These things are possible, but people rather be on a base frequency. People rather be on that trashy talk and disrespectful talk instead of respecting the dead. We respect the dead. We respect the ancestors. And if you truly respect the dead, you allow the dead to at least be buried before you speak. If you truly respect the dead, let them be buried first before we start assuming. He wasn't dead 2 hours before the internet was flooded. But this is the society we live in. Welcome to America. This is why I'm speaking about American culture. American culture, we have to embrace it. It's like we try to get away from individualism, self-awareness, Western ideology, like man is God, or a man universe, mind is a universe, man equals mind. That's all Western. You go to the East, they have a totality mentality. They have a oneness. All that oneness talk, we are all one soul, we are all one spirit. That's Eastern. You come to Western occultism, now the emphasis is on the individual. It's not like we are all, yes, we are all that, but the focus is on the individual. That's what Western philosophy does. And that's why we're always split between the two, where you want to embrace, being humble, and being balanced. But then you realize where you are, then you're like, I can't do it completely the way that they do it over there, or the way that it was practiced in this. Because we are in America, we have to always be aware of the actual land that we occupy. We try to abandon that. Again, saying that you're from Africa and not claiming your American soil is why we suffer. Claiming a religion that was given to you versus your inner religion, I, self, law, and matter, is why we are destroyed. I have observed this with my own eyes, and this is the conclusion I came to. This is after wandering literally all over the country, visiting. So I've been to too many cities. I can't name them all. Observing the culture of this entire country and seeing why do people suffer. I'm going all over the country asking these questions. Why are people suffering? What are the economics? What are the dynamics? Honestly, in my heart, wanting to know what is going on. When I receive the answer, I realize that this is not what it seems on the surface. You can get in your feelings about it. You can get emotional about it. You can have pity for these people. But it's not necessarily working like that. They are actually not as ignorant as they appear to be. They are actually tricksters. This is the real game. All these so-called poor people, impoverished mentality, poverty consciousness, whatever we want to call it, these people are not ignorant. These people are not dumb. These people are not asleep, as we want to call them, the mentally dead. These people are not none of that. These people know exactly what's going on, and they use to make you think that they don't. You are dealing with tricksters. I've literally slept on streets just to observe. Like, I put myself in a hellish situation to observe. What the fuck? Why are people living like this? Where is the force that's keeping people down? Where is the external force? Where is this vision of what's keeping people down? I want to see it with my own eyes. Let me see the force that's keeping people on the bottom, because this is what we are claiming, right? I want to learn, where's this force at? So if it's on the streets, okay, we talking about the streets so much. If it's on the streets, let me find it. Where is this force that's keeping everybody down, that's holding everybody down, that's keeping everybody ignorant, that's keeping everybody mentally dead? Where is this force that's just holding on? Okay, I'm going directly to it. I want to have a conversation. What's force? I didn't find this force. I went to the darkest of the dark. Anybody know about Skid Row in Los Angeles? I went to the darkest of the dark to find what the fuck is keeping people. Excuse me, language, I'm not trying to cuss. What is keeping people in the situations they are in? Where is this external force? Was not able to find it anywhere. Because here I am in the same situation they're in. Let's just say, oh, these are homeless people. Well, technically at the time, I didn't have a roof over my head. So you can say, oh, we're all homeless. So I'm on the same level as them. I'm not looking at myself as above. You don't have nowhere to lay, neither do I. So there's no reason to get myself above or below. So I'm like, I'm right here with everybody. Let me see what's going on here. And in order for me to do that personally, I had to live amongst all the madness. That's the difference. You have people who study, but you don't have people putting in that groundwork who actually stand on the ground. So at the end of the day, I was here to observe. Where is this force? Didn't find it. But what did I find? I'll tell you what I did find. So I talked about what I didn't find. But what did I find? What were my observations? What conclusion did I come to by not finding it? Well, what did I find? What I did find was that, as I said before, people are tricksters. All these so-called people that are helpless, all these so-called people, and again, I'm not speaking about the people who don't have the mental capacity to navigate their own lives. So I'm not talking about those people who can't navigate, because most of these people can navigate life. So I'm not talking about people who, who have some type of mental handicap. Not them, not children, not kids. Not speaking of, I'm talking about grown women who are fully functional. Right? What I did find was, because I didn't stay in one place, because it never occurred to me that I was supposed to stay in one place. So when I was doing my wandering activities, I'll go from Skid Row all the way to Santa Monica, all the way to North Hollywood, all the way to Long Beach, so on and so forth. I wasn't just staying in one place. So what I realized was I was the only one doing that. I realized, okay, I'm over here, I only see certain people over here. When I'm over here, I only see certain people over here. When I'm over here, I only see certain people over here. When I'm over here, I only see... I don't see that person I saw over there. I don't see him over there. That person over there, I don't see him over there. You know what I mean? So I'm the only one moving like this. That's like, it just never occurred to me that my face to get familiar to people. I know that was never my intention. Like, no, my face is not gonna go, oh, that's the homeless dude, or no, like it was like, nah, that's not the time I'm on. Like, my face is not about to be familiar nowhere. So every day I'm in a different location. You know what I mean? Like, no, I've never seen him before. Never seen him yet. That's the reaction I want every day. Who is that? Who is that? We ain't familiar, nothing. Just a certain mentality, especially if you're faced with those circumstances. The last thing you want is people knowing who you are, how you move, and all that. You don't want nobody knowing no type of information about nothing you have going on. You're not getting involved with nobody. You just stay focused on your path. You know what I mean? Because the temptation is there. Like, if I wasn't focused, then yeah, I would have. Y'all see me. It's all recorded. I would have fell victim to the streets. If I wasn't focused, I would have, let me just start the drugs, doing this. I'm helpless. You know what I mean? If I had that mentality, then I wouldn't have made it. That's why I continuously recorded it. Like, here I am right now in these situations. This is what I'm thinking. This is what's going on. Y'all see it with your own eyes. And it is what it is. And you see, like, I'm still have this same mentality. My outer circumstance does not influence this. So you see me, regardless of whatever situation you see me inside, you see me outside, you see me up, you see me down, regardless of, I still have this same consistency in my thinking, because the outer circumstances is not influencing the internal chambers. But I had to prove that to myself by placing myself in harsh situations and rising above them. Like, I'm like, okay, if man is God, so on and so forth, all right, I should be able to be in the worst of the worst situation and levitate myself out of it. I'm like, how else are you going to show and prove what you know? Like, I'm God. Okay, if you God, God should be able to go to hell and rise to heaven. That's what God should be able to do. Alchemy, to turn lead into gold, to turn water into wine. You should have that ability. You should have that Christ-like attribute about yourself if you claim to be some type of divine being. This is what divine beings do. They don't just stay in their heavenly gates and just chill. They going into the darkest of the dark, constantly training their body and their minds. So I looked at it as, so as I'm going through my training, because I'm mentally focused while enduring harsh situations, because I just really honestly wanted to know, I'm like, yo, what is keeping people in these situations? And again, what I found was most of the people were religious. So most of the people didn't know their own God. They accepted a God that was foreign to them. That's what I did notice. Every time I was handing people money, oh, thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Christ. I'm like, what? I'm like, Jesus? You still worship Jesus and you begging for cash? I'm like, either your faith is ultra strong or it's misplaced. Again, I'm not here to say which it was. Either their faith was strong enough to endure or their faith was misplaced. So I just pose that question. You come to your own conclusion. Another thing that was discovered, so not just the philosophy and the thinking, because that influences your thinking. So their thinking was of a foreign mentality. So what about what they were doing? How were their day-to-day activities? So I subjected myself, again, being the magi that we all are, I can appear, let's just say, homeless, but still mentally astute. Remember, the wise can appear to be foolish, but the foolish cannot appear to be wise, right? So I'm like, okay, let me appear to be foolish. Let me appear to not know what the F is going on. Let me appear to be ignorant. Let me appear to be needy, so on and so forth. Let me put on this persona. Let me put on this mask to observe the laws of nature. Not to necessarily get into people's business and trying to do all that, just to observe nature, how people are interacting with me, how people are perceiving me based on the energy that I emit, right? Real time. So I'm doing this training in real time. So I'm like, okay. I realize that I'm the only one doing this. Right, I'm like, okay, because I'm thinking, I'm like, okay, if you're on the streets, if you're in a harsh situation, you gotta be militant. You gotta be thinking like an athlete. You gotta be watching your back. This is how I'm thinking. I'm like, you can't be slipping on. You know what I mean? Somebody will come take stuff out of your pocket, so on and so forth. You know what I mean? I've been a victim of this. You know what I mean? You will get caught slipping. So you gotta be on your P's and Q's. So I'm like, I'm like, okay, I realize I'm the only one thinking like this. I'm the only one thinking like this warrior, this ninja, like just literally on this life or death mentality. Like, somebody can come around the corner and try to, do something to me that's ungraceful. So just being aware of your surroundings very, very intently. I realize I'm the only one doing this because everyone else is, let's just say, blown out of their mind, some type of drugs or something. So I'm like, yo, it's like I'm kind of looking out for everybody else while they're in space land somewhere. They're in space land, and I'm, making sure that everything is on point. Cause I'm like, yeah, I'm like, I can be amongst you, but I'm not gonna put nothing in my arm. Yeah, I'm amongst you. You know what I mean? But I'm not engaging in the lifestyle. That's the key amongst. But you don't have to engage. I'm like, nah, I'm cool. But when I see them engage on eyes, I'm like, okay, this is, oh, they do this and they black out. So I'm like, yo, if I wasn't here, I'm like, somebody could literally walk up on them, dig in their pockets, and take everything, and it's too high to even they wouldn't even know. Versus they're just in an unfortunate situation, going through an unfortunate time, and as things get better and better, then they're right back where I'm say right back. They begin to levitate, levitate, levitate. But when they begin to levitate, they start to descend. You know what I mean? So it becomes a tide. The moon, it becomes a wave thing. Because at the same time, there's a thin line between detoxing yourself and abusing yourself. There's a thin line between that. And I start to observe that there's a thin line between, let's just say, somebody fasting and somebody doing too many drugs. It's a thin line between the detox, because obviously when you do drugs, your body is having chemical reactions that detox you. You know what I mean? And when you are going through a natural detox without the use of drugs, it's like the body is having a similar type of reaction. So drugs actually enhance, the chemical reactions when you are enduring, a harsh situation. That's why herbs like weed, it makes you stronger because it connects you to the Saturn. I spoke about this on the video is called "The Signs of the Devil's Leaf." I'm just going into the Saturn nature of weed. So if you're in a harsh situation, you smoke some weed, it makes it bearable. That's how people get through. Smoke you a little joint. You can be freezing cold, super hot. You can be through a situation that's very intense. You smoke you some herb, it matures you, it solidifies you, it makes it more bearable. So you get through your day. This is how people get through their day. So I'm like, okay, I understand that. If you're going through a harsh situation, just like I understand if somebody was at war, surrounded by death, I can understand you may need to smoke a joint every day to keep yourself mentally focused. I perfectly understand that if you're enduring hardships. So I didn't judge because people engage in drugs because I understand like, hey, if you're in a harsh environment, this is kind of what you have to do to get bearable. So of course, I myself, smoke marijuana, so can't judge anybody else. It's all the same stuff in terms of the use of it to just get you through the day, especially if you're enduring harsh environments. So I'm like, okay, this is what they do to get through the harsh environment. But what I observed was, I'm like, all right, I understand you doing this to get through, but it's more than just get because you're doing it to get through, but again, now you're placing yourself in situations that make you vulnerable, and that's when people end up getting robbed. So you may be building up, building up, building up, building up, make one mistake. Let's just say you pass out on the street, got a little bit, too it passed out. Somebody to run your pockets. Now you back to square one. So you see a lot of that. You see a lot of that. You see a lot of levitation, 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 then the reset. Levitation, 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 one bad mistake, one bad mistake, reset. So it's a tide thing. And you can say, if they're here, they're just going up and down, up and down, up and down. They don't hit those peaks because you can say they use the drugs. They try to hit the peaks. You can say that's what the drugs is for. That's why they are willing to engage in the harder drugs. Well, this is what I learned about the harder drugs. So I'm like, okay. Like, okay, I smoke weed, I smoke marijuana. But then they call marijuana the gateway drug. I'm like, you start with the joints. Then you go eventually start sniffing cocaine, popping pills, doing this, doing that. So I'm like, okay. They're like, yeah, I smoke weed, but I'm like, if I was living in a harsh environment, would I need harder drugs to endure? That was a honest question I had. If I was in a harsh environment, do I need harder drugs to endure? Is that just something that if you the harsher your environment, the harder the drugs? So man, that was a real question. Harsher environment, harder drug. Is that how it goes? Or is that why people who are in harsh situations, that's why they do the drugs? And is it that they started with cigarettes or started with weed, and as the situation became harsher and harsher, they went to harder, and that's how they endure, or is it something different? So I had to put the theory to the test. So I guess one day, I found a pill dealer. I guess what do they call it nowadays? Mollies. Yeah, I'm like, all right. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, I got this weed in, but I got this Molly. You want the Molly? Oh yeah. I'm like, yeah. Give me the Molly. Yeah, not the cuts. I'm just telling you real stuff. I'm like, okay. Let me conduct this experiment. So I'm gonna take this pill. No, I didn't take the full pill. I was sprinkling the Molly on the weed and wrapping it in a blunt wrap. Some crazy. I think about this now, and I'm like, yo, I don't know how I was. I don't even smoke blunts now. I'm like, I don't know how I was doing that. But I'm like, all right, if you're in a hard situation, I'm like, okay, this is a harder drug. Let me try it. I'm like, okay, smoking it up. And I just felt the coolness, because when you smoke weed, you heat up. It makes you hotter. So I'm like, okay, with the addition of the Molly, I felt the coolness. I'm like, oh, this is like I remember, reading about this. People who have done harder drugs, they talk about like coolness, a cool sensation. I'm like, oh, I remember reading about this sensation. I'm like, this is interesting. But I'm like, do I need to rely on this? I don't think so. It never dawned. This needs to be my everyday thing now. So after I did that one pill, never did again. I think about this now. I'm not telling this to you try because I wouldn't do it nowadays. I'm like, yo, that's a little bit too crazy. But I did it for experiment. And I'm like, yo, I don't see myself, even in this harsh environment that I'm in, this harsh situation that I'm in, I don't see myself doing this. Like, I need to depend on this. I'm like, nah, I'm like, yo, I don't, just like I never got to the point where I needed to inject myself with needles. I'm like, oh, I don't, it never got that serious. It never got that serious. Even if on the outside looking in, a person could say, oh, yeah, he's going through some harsh times. But in my mind, I'm like, yo, it ain't that serious. It's not that serious. To the point where I want to engage constantly in harder drugs. It never got to that point. So I'm like, all right. So hard situations don't go harder drugs. So I had to solve that equation. I solved that equation. Harsher situation, harder drugs. No, they can't. So okay, well, what is it with these harder drugs? So I had to study drugs. So I started studying drugs. Realized the synthetic drugs, like heroin or heroin, the drugs that are like made in laboratories, they're more physical, right? You got the psychedelics, but then you got the I was gonna say the cardinal drugs, or you got the high magic, you got the low magic, essentially. So the more physical drugs like cocaine and heroin or heroin, so on and so forth, I believe like crystal meth as well, where these are not necessarily psychedelics, but they're highly physically stimulated, I guess. It heightens the physical sensation, I guess. It makes everything more tingly. Again, for those who are familiar with ASMR, I guess it enhances your ASMR. We just say it like that for those who understand the terminology. I guess the more cardinal drugs make your ASMR experience more versatile. So I guess a person like whispering in your ear will probably be a lot more, flowing. Just my speculation. So I'm like, okay, the synthetic drugs are more physical. The psychedelics are more mental. That the mental depth, the mind transformation, the spirit enlightenment, so on and so forth. All those things we speak about, that's more about psychedelics. So the Californian culture was more about psychedelics. It's more about that mental depth and that mental reconfiguration. That's the California, so that's why California was more about the psychedelics. So the drug or the so-called drug culture wasn't just all, it was mainly psychedelics, because weed is a mild psychedelic. It's mild, so you ain't gonna go too crazy off of no herb, unless you have a special type of recipe for it. Nonetheless, so after I observed and I studied this firsthand with my own eyes, not taking no one else's word for it, putting myself in the harshest of situations and giving myself every reason to use a needle, every reason to do harder drugs, every reason to give up, it just did happen. I'm like, yo, I'm still at the library every day. I'm like, I'm still going to study. I'm like, this situation is not going to keep me out of the library. Like, this situation is not going to keep me from advancing my mind. It's free. You can just walk up in there, pick up a book, get reading. No, nobody's going to stop you from doing that. So, like, I'm still in the library. I'm keeping myself up. I'm like, just because you're in a hard situation don't mean you need to, allow yourself to fall off the rails. You can still be presentable. You don't have to look like a caveman because you're going through a hard situation unless you want to. Like, there's nothing stopping you from, trimming up, keeping your stuff low. Like, ain't nothing stopping you, right? So I'm like, okay, well, why are people allowing themselves to appear to be cave-like when ain't nothing stopping them from advancing their mind? They need to get anywhere. You just gotta walk. I mastered walking. I'm walking all the way from Santa Monica to downtown for those who know the terminology. So it is taking 5 hours, 6 hours, 7 hour walk, 5 hours, 6 hours, 7 hour walks all over the city. Not because I had to, but I'm like, how long would it? I just want to know. I'm like, it's an equation. So I'm at the beach. So I'm at the beach. How long would it take me to get back downtown? I didn't know the answer. It's like, oh, it's only one way to find out. So it took about 6 hours. I'm like, okay. So now I know how long it takes to walk from the beach to downtown because I measured it. You know, I'm like, So here I am. This type of stuff I'm doing. This is the type of stuff that I'm asking myself. I'm like, oh, how long does it take to get to the beach? Like, so I'm conducting experiments. I'm doing everything I do anyway. So it's like I'm not changing because I'm facing harsher situations. I'm not changing. Like I still got the mathematical mind. I'm still thinking like a scientist. I'm still in the same way I always think. Like my mind is not changing just because of the environment. And I had to place myself in those environments to test that theory. So now I'm not just speaking and I'm like, all right, well, what if you're in you're faced with absolute uncertainty. You don't know where your next meal is coming from. Like you're in a situation that's right in front of your face. How mental focus do you have? So I'm like, oh, I'm still thinking. Like again, I'm still in the library. I'm still advancing my mind. I'm still researching. I'm still studying. Again, I still got access, to a phone. So I still got the internet. You know what I mean? Obviously, I'm still making YouTube videos. Again, you see me. It's all documented. I'm still doing everything I'm doing anyway, regardless of the harshness of the situation. Like I'm still who I am. So I'm like, so it was a certain point in the person's development where they made the decision to give up, or they made the decision to go in the opposite direction. It was a decision that was made versus a certain situation that occurred that they just was not able to get out of. And again, the only reason I know that because I'm like, let me place myself in this situation, and either I'm going to fall off, I'm going to become a drug addict on the street, sleeping on the sidewalk like everyone else. Not everyone else, but the people that you see there. Either this is my fate, or my fate is elevation. So it's just different for me because it. I'll tell you what really woke me up was the amount of people that saw. Again, if you know anything about Skid Row, we know that Los Angeles has the largest amount of homeless people. So is more homeless people in Los Angeles, I believe, than any other city in America. So the amount of homelessness there, you can't escape it. It don't matter what level of living you are on, you see homelessness. If you're anywhere in Los Angeles, you know what I mean. It's probably better now, in recent 2019, I don't know. But that element is constantly there. You can't ignore it. I mean, you can ignore it, but you can't not see it. Is that element is there. So this is what I mean by when your mind. I guess they say when a person is set in their ways, their outer circumstances don't really change them. So I'm like, maybe my mind is just already set for me to think the way I think, and even if I'm in a hard situation, I'm still trying to find the way. Where's the nearest library? You know what I mean? I'm still looking. I'm still thinking like that. I'm still like, all right. The situation is altering. Like, you know what? I'm just not going to do anything today. I'm going to sit here and feel bad about myself, and I'm going to, put up a sign or something. I never got to that point where I'm like, I think it's time to give up. It was just, I don't know. Like every day was like there's a mystery to be solved. There's a puzzle to be solved. I need to figure out how this works. I'm still waking up aggressive every single day, just with the information. Like I'm observing. I'm studying the laws of nature just to see how it works and manipulating the law. And that's what I was doing. I realized that I had a greater grasp and manipulation of the law when I was in those type of harsher situations. I guess because you're putting more pressure on the mind. Like I had a greater grasp on nature, so it actually made the situation more bearable because I felt like I had a greater grasp on nature. It twists the mind in ways that nothing else does. So I'm like, what actually makes this situation bearable is because I feel like I have a greater grasp on reality and a greater grasp on things. I don't feel so disconnected to my environment because again, if you're sleeping outside, if you're sleeping literally on the concrete or on rocks or on the grass, if you're that connected to the earth, then you're not going to feel disconnected from it. So I guess by me sleeping more on it, it changed it. Whatever it did, you can say the negative ions if you want to be scientific. I was being charged more with negative ions because you have negative ions. The moment you step outside, you get charged with negative ions. But inside of your home, it tends to be more positive ions. So that's when people feel other than themselves when they're inside. The moment you step out, you know, it's a different vibration. So I guess because I was more exposed to nature, I was more exposed to negative ions, it gave me a greater grasp on nature, mind working a lot more efficiently. Like I'm still doing mantras, I'm still working my mind. I'm like, okay, let me try this mantra. Every day I'm trying a different mantra. It's like every day I got a puzzle to solve. I'm like, okay, this mantra does this. Let me see how that works in real time. So every day I'm having some type of puzzle to be solved. And I guess being more connected to nature allowed me to do that even more aggressively and without distraction. Because now you're not distracted with all the stuff that we're normally distracted with. You know, we're trying to maintain the roof over our head, take care of the kids, so on and so forth. So when you leave that alone, 30 days, 40 days, 50 days, but I guess a lot of people, they can't leave it alone for that amount of time. So, you know, just giving you as much information as I can so that you don't have to or any of this. So this is to promote, this is what you need to do. Study my situation. You know exactly what goes on there. You realize that it's not going to change you. People made the decision to change, and once they make that decision to change, that's when you see what you see. Because I was right in the midst of all that, had every opportunity to become that, but it's like my mind would just not allow me to just not do anything during the day. I'm like, okay, let me work. And in the midst of my mind staying active like that, I was able to attract resources that I needed to continue the path. Which is why when you see me today, you see my mind is not getting slower, it's getting even more intricate. I'm like, I don't even want to talk about old stuff anymore. I'm still, even if I speak about old topics, I'm updating it, I'm keeping it. You know what I mean? Like, my mind was not weakened. My mind was strengthened when I was in harsher environments. My mind became stronger instead of weaker. You know, so I'm like, so the streets actually strengthened my mind instead of weakened my mind. Because I'm like, yo, I have to I have more of a reason to hit the library every day. I have more of a reason to keep myself up. I have more of a reason. Why? Because this is what it was. Because I'm like, I'm in Los Angeles. Everybody sees you. Everybody is doing everything. So let's just say if you're trying to sleep on a train or whatever, it's like you're gonna wake up and eyes are all on you. And I'm like, yo, that's the worst feeling in the world, at least for me. When you wake up, like you're literally like just you woke up out of sleep and you like, you know, you got eyes on. And after that, that happened to me one time. You know, I must have fell asleep. Well, you know, I'm like, I fell asleep. Motherfucking eyes like fucking motherfuckers. I'm like, yo, like this is not cool. Motherfuckers looking at me and my mouth open and shit. Y'all know how it is. Just imagine you waking up and you got eyes on you. Like it's if you don't wanna feel like that, like yo, I'm like, this is not happening again. This is like yo, I learned my lesson. Like yo, I can't be seen in that light. I never allowed myself to be seen in that light again. I'm like, yo, hey, like if I'm asleep, then you know that my face is drippy, not drippy like wet, but flashy. I'm stylish. You know what I mean? You know, I'm fresh. I'm drippy. So even if I'm asleep, you know what I mean? My clothes is clean. You know what I mean? I look presentable. That's it. Like I'm sleep all day. I go to sleep anyway. As opposed of, you know what I mean? I look homeless. You know what I mean? Yeah, you look homeless, you smell homeless. It's like that's like nah. My mind would not allow me. I'm like, yo, what are you doing? You know what I mean? Like just because you're in this situation don't mean women are not looking at you. Don't you still can't get action? Like all these things are still in play. Like don't think this situation is gonna stop you from attracting the opposite sex, stop you from still making money, stop you from doing anything. You just don't have a place to comfortably rest your head, and you just have to go even more harder. So when I start putting those dynamics, I'm like, oh, I can. Everything is still on. You know what I mean? Like yeah, just because I'm in a situation, like a woman will run up on you and like, yeah, yo, what's happening? Like, not out of the equation because you're in a situation where you may be under the weather. That's automatic. Like, because I'm under the weather, then I'm not going to get any type of play. It don't work like that. A woman can just run up on you like, let me actually help you feel better. Let me cook you up some tea or something. That's still possible, as opposed to we're out of we're out of our mind. Like, oh, this, like, none of this. This is that's when I realized, like, yo, when we're in these harsh environments or these harsh situations, we tend to think like, oh, I'm not as attractive as I normally am, or I'm not as on top of my game as I usually am. Like, oh, when I was thinking like that, it wasn't the truth. I was creating a false reality, thinking, because I was, when I was going through all this, I was more focused on, like, nobody ain't, be deal with me on the close, because I'm thinking like everybody knows my situation. Like, sometimes you start thinking like that, like, everybody knows I'm homeless. But no, they don't. Especially if you keep yourself up, they don't know what's really going on. They don't. So because they don't know what's really going on, it's not like they're looking at you like there's a problem. They're not looking like, oh, he's going through problems right now. That's not their perspective. They're looking at you like, oh, everybody else, you going through your from point A to point B, whatever. You all just so happen to cross paths. So it's as simple as, I'm like, yo, so the game is still on. Like, just because we're going through whatever we're going through, the game is still on. It's still the universe, as we call it, right? You can still manipulate your mind to influence your environment. You don't lose your power to influence your environment. You don't lose that just because you may have lost your material foundation. You don't lose your mental power. So when I was in those situations, I didn't lose my mental power, and because I was always focused on strengthening my mental power, I'm like, oh, I was able to see, like, oh, I can strengthen my mind so much so to endure very harsh situations. It's just a level of strengthening the mind to endure. And again, because you just have this aggressive hunger, not for food, but for spiritual wisdom, just have a thirst and a hunger for spiritual wisdom, you're going to use every day as an opportunity to study the laws of nature, because you just have a thirst for it. Other people have a thirst for cardinal realities. You just got a thirst for that spiritual wisdom, and you're going to find it regardless of which you may be enduring. So again, use this information as a lesson of the mind doesn't stop working because we are going through certain situations. The games is still on. You're going to still get play. You're still in the midst of everything. You can still come up. You can still meet a person that changes your life for the better. All the games is still on, regardless of what, we may be feeling eternally defeated. Like, damn, how that, we be doubting ourselves, not realizing that, like, yo, while we trying to figure out, like, damn, well, like, for example, I'm thinking, oh, what am I going to eat? What's my next meal going to be? While I'm thinking about what's my next meal going to be, I'm missing that the woman 50 feet from me is checking me out. I'm thinking about my stomach. Then you missing the opportunity. And so I'm just giving an example of when we be focused so much on, like, what we are going through internally, we tune out of the outer environment, and we are not able to seize the moments that are clearly right before us, but we be so much in the mental plane, we're not observant enough to seize the opportunities literally, like, placed in our laps. It'd be opportunities that literally be placed in your laps, but you be so mentally trying to figure things out. Like, it's just literally, trust me, like, everybody know who it is. It's just certain situations that things just fall in your lap, and you literally still can't see it because you like, it can't be that simple. You trying to question, like, it can't be that simple. Yeah. What I mean? Like, just like, as a man, like, it can't be that simple. Like, a woman approaches you and she, You know, she offers everything to you. Like, no, it's like as a man, you're supposed to be offering everything to the woman. So like, if a woman start offering you, you feel like, yo, what is she doing? You feel like you questioning it. You start to like, is this how does this make sense? You know, you see that jittery. You start it's happening like this because it's unusual. You know what I mean? It's completely opposite to what you grew up believing and what you may have grew up seeing. The universe or the law is showing you the contrast. The universe, the law is showing you the opposite. Nature is showing you the opposite. But as a man, you take care of a woman, but what about a woman that wants to take care of you? Are you comfortable enough to navigate that situation appropriately without necessarily feeling like you are being lesser than? You know, 'cause, you know, you're like, oh, a woman, like, I don't want nobody taking care of me. But it's not about how you feel internally. It's about a person is offering something to you. So you have to be receptive and give back to them. It has to be a exchange of energy that's created. So their form of currency may be the way they show love may be in the form of gifts. That's how some people show they love in the form of giving people physical gifts. Like, yo, this is a symbol of my love. Some people do it more with affection. People have different ways of showing forth their love. Some people do it again with money. Other people do it with kisses. Other people do it with sexual orientation, whatever. Everyone has their methods. So, however, a person chooses to show forth their method of love, you have to be accepting of it because it's not about how you feel about it. It's not about what you. It's not about, well, my philosophy says this. I shouldn't accept that. No, you take the goddamn gifts or whatever form of love, and you find a way to keep the energy going. These are the laws of nature, and this is what I'm saying. Just being in the harshest of harsh. There's not too many people who's been in harsher situations than I have because I placed myself in the situation versus oh things just were bad. Like, you know, I'm purposely placing myself in hellish places versus oh life just placed you there. Life didn't place me there. I placed myself there to observe. So because I placed myself there, I'm like I done been through the harsh situations on purpose. Just to say that like yeah, I was able to endure it. Not just this, not that I'm around bragging about this. It's just more of I can reflect the mental lessons and the mental strength that had to be demonstrated. That I was like, oh, this is what's really going on. Use these opportunities to strengthen your grasp on nature. You have to have a stronger grasp on nature. Strengthen your grasp on nature, then life opens to you a lot more vastly. So being in harsher situations makes you more connected to nature. So again, like I was using earlier about if you are a soldier at war and you're witnessing death on a daily basis, picking up bodies, seeing brains blew out, you know, that's your friend. You were just talking to him yesterday. Now you seeing his face totally destroyed or now you only have one arm. You're going through this on a daily basis, connected intimately with death, carrying dead bodies, people. It influences you in a different way because the energy, the deaf consciousness is right at your front door. So it influences you and makes you a lot more hardened to the point where death doesn't disturb you as much as it would dismiss. And you have learned to observe the law and study the law and actually extract some type of resources and some type of wisdom from that consciousness. So that's why you people who have witnessed death are different because of the death consciousness and their understanding of it. So again, you know, anybody if you know this, if you know anyone who's been around a lot of death, it influences them different. So if you're in again a war, whether it's the war zone is the streets or the war zone is foreign lands, you being in such harsh environments makes you more aware of your environment because you're like